Today is my birthday, and so I figured I'd talk about Spinosaurus, because that's what I normally do. So Spinosaurus was a large theropod that lived in North Africa during the late Cretaceous period. It is a very strange dinosaur with all kinds of very notable traits. Of course, it does have a long, thin snout filled with straight and conical teeth. Those teeth would have been perfect for catching slippery prey, like fish. Obviously, fish would have been the main thing on Spinosaurus's menu. But along with that, Spinosaurus likely had a long neck, huge and powerful arms with 3 massive claws on each hand, and proportionally short legs. However, that last bit is a little bit more controversial. But the most notable trait about Spinosaurus, and something that earned it its name of the high-spined lizard, is that sail on its back. Now, the exact purpose of this sail is not quite known, but it is likely that it was used for display, possibly to scare off an opponent, to make yourself look bigger, to attract a mate, or possibly to even identify different members of the same species. But on top of its huge sail, it also does have a very weird looking tail. The tail at first glance would almost look like a paddle because of the tall neural spines and the long chevrons. In fact, many had assumed that it would use its tail like a paddle to kind of like propel itself in the water. However, it's also worth mentioning that the tail is pretty similar to a basilisk lizard's tail, and basilisk lizards do not use their tail for swimming, rather they use their tails for display purposes. So it's possible that Spinosaurus would use its tail for the same reason. While we're on that topic, why don't we talk a little bit about the controversial topic that is Spinosaurus swimming. I'm sure that many of you think of Spinosaurus as a semi-aquatic dinosaur, very similar to like crocodiles. Well, there are some researchers who are in favor for that too. In fact, there are many who believe that Spinosaurus would spend most of its time in the water, swimming, diving, and doing all of these really crazy things. In fact, it was noted that Spinosaurus does potentially have incredibly dense bones, which is something that would help an animal control its buoyancy, dive and things like that. However, more recently this has been called into question, and other variables have been applied as well, such as the fact that Spinosaurus did still have air sacs running throughout its skeleton, which wouldn't really help with the controlling of buoyancy thing. And Spinosaurus does have a huge surface area, that being the sail. That sail would create a lot of drag, even if it was just submerged underwater partially. So having that huge surface area wouldn't really be beneficial when you're trying to chase down fish underwater. So rather, it seems much more likely that Spinosaurus would spend most of its time on the shores or in shallow waters catching fish like that, a little bit more like a heron. Obviously, we need more data to say for certain, but that's kind of what the evidence supports right now. All in all, Spinosaurus is just a very strange and amazing dinosaur.